Welcome to Sober Talk. I'm Dennis and I'm an alcoholic. Sober today thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous. If you or anyone you know is struggling with alcohol, please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 222222 or visit their website at aa.org.au. I'll just run through the preamble of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problems and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for a membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. It is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses or opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety.
Hi, my name's Jamie and I'm an alcoholic. Sitting here, my heart's skipping a beat every couple of seconds. And I suppose when I came back into recovery this time, my ears were open a bit more, and I started listening to a few people that I hadn't listened to before, and it got me going back on my life and took me back to when when I was born, sort of thing. A member said to me, if you when we come into the world, you've got 100% God consciousness, and if you can sort of unravel that stuff as you've grown up, you can sort of work out work out your life, I suppose. And I started meditating on that this year. I was meditating 3 hours a day for the first 6 months of my recovery, and just because my head was 100 miles an hour, and I basically my dad he wasn't an alcoholic, but his father was, my grandfather, and they grew up in a hotel in the city with his two brothers and sister. One brother was an alcoholic, and my dad was just a heavy drinker. Like he didn't. He was supposed to take over the hotel, and he decided not to because he was the oldest son, and he was supposed to take it over. But he said, "No, I don't want to take it over because I don't want to be like my father." And my grandfather was a pretty big alcoholic, and was very angry in that when he was drunk. But he was a great guy, when he was sober. Like a lot of alcoholics in my family are like that. And when I was 6 months old, my dad was a really good person. Like he was a great person. He was always helped everyone, and always helped out his mates, and he was very successful when he was young, and he used to drink a lot because he was out, with business things and all that, and on one particular time he came home when I was 6 months. I was in my mum's arms, and he hit my mum pretty hard, and I fell to the ground. I went to hospital, and a week after that, my mum had a brain aneurysm, which put her in a wheelchair for 3 years. So for the first 3 years of my life, it was like I didn't have a mother. My father was quite wealthy at that time because so he got a nanny for me and my sister. We had a nanny until we were about 10 years old, and she was like my mother. And so even after, when my mum was able to look after us, well, my sister's 3 years older than me, so she had my mother. So I've never really had that bond with my mum where I love my mum very much, but I don't have that same, I've grown up seeing people's bonds with their mother, and I don't have it, I don't have that. But my sister does. So I've always felt a bit like, I've always felt like a bit of a black sheep. I was always the quiet one. I was the one who, my dad, I don't blame my dad for that, and either does my mum. They stayed together till the end. But I was the one who would sit at the dinner table and not say anything while the family argued, and there was a lot of that going on after I was about 9 years old because my dad, you know, I think his control issues brought this on because he was so, he hated himself for what he thought he'd done, to my mum, and he never lived that down, and he just wanted to provide, and he ended up selling his businesses. He thought he was going to make more money, and he lost it all, and so basically from 10 onwards, all I ever really, the family was just, oh, we got no money, they still put us through private schools and that sort of thing. Um, and so I've just had that, constant from about 10 years old of my mum was used to, you know, a certain way, and so I've always heard that sort of thing. So I think it really affected me in a way that, I always wanted to try and make money, I suppose. Like it sort of ruled, but I never did, like, because I just spent it on alcohol and drugs. But yeah, I picked up a drink when I was 13, and that was always going to happen. Like, alcohol was a thing in my family where it's my my it wasn't a problem. Even today, I say to my mum, don't you think Dad had a problem drinking? He was just a big drinker, but I remember times when he'd ride drunk through two barbed wire fences on a motorbike, and fully cut himself up. And he once, these are things I remember. And he had a brand new SLR 5000. 2 days after he got it, he wrapped around a Stobie pole, all while drunk. And it was just a madman. Had a fishing boat. He'd go out in the deepest seas, and he'd be pissed, and would go up to our beach house, and as soon as we got to two wells, the long necks would come out, and they go over the roof. And I used to do that too when I started driving and stuff. And yeah, drinking. My first drink was a blackout drink. I drank all the liquor in Mum and Dad's cabinet with a friend from school. He was a big guy, and he didn't get affected as much as me, but I just remembered that buzz and passed out completely, and woke up in a pile of spew, and swore I'd never drink again. And then it was just West Coast coolers and pretty harmless sort of drinking, I suppose. But I was always curious for that next thing. And yeah, so marijuana, and I always hung around people that liked, we got into ecstasy, we got into acid, we got into all those things, and we just go away on the weekends. We have a really good time. And the group of people I did that with, that none of them were like me. They were different because I remember one particular time I took, we were drinking at Sellex Beach, and I took this acid trip, and there's 10 of us, and I thought I could fly, I thought I could go to the stars and all this stuff. And I seriously, I still remember it like it was yesterday, but that didn't happen to any of my friends. And there was 10 of us there. And I ended up thinking I could fly, and I jumped off a cliff, and I had concussed and 10 stitches in my head. And yeah, that's when I was drinking, I would do crazy stuff, always when I was drinking, every time. And I was in blackout every time, and that got a bit much. I had a really nice relationship when I was 19. Well, it lasted for 4 years, and that ended. That's probably the one girl that was a really, really good relationship until I mucked it up with my drinking and taking drugs. It was the only time that I believe that I was really in love with someone. And I stuffed it completely. I would yeah, I ended up burning, well, I put a house, and I burned all of Dad's deck chairs, and just in alcoholic blackout, just doing crazy stuff. And that was the beginning of the end for that. And then I partied for a few years in Perth and had a really good time there. And I got into first, I always wanted to try heroin for some reason. I wanted to know what that was like. And I tried it, didn't do much. And then I remember one day I was about 25 years old. I was at the end with alcohol and drinking. I was just sitting. I was installing panel doors for Gliderol, which I did in my 20s, and I'd get to the job, and I'd just sit there, and I'd have a few cones to try and get over my hangover, and I just wanna neck myself. I didn't wanna live anymore. The alcohol had stopped working at that point, and, yeah, I didn't know what to do, but I that's when the heroin came in. That sort of saved me in a sense. Like, uh, and then, I couldn't get off of it. I was just always trying to get off of it, and, uh, it was something that I thought I could get off, and I just couldn't. And, I thought that won't happen to me. I've been able to put these things down. I don't have to, put the ecstasy down and put all that other stuff down. It won't affect me in this. But that wasn't the case, and, I ended up having a roller door business, which I started, and I'd be drinking, using, whatever, and I made really good money, really good money. I had a really successful business, but when I would use it on heroin and I'd run out of money and I'd end up, breaking into people's houses while I had this business that was making me plenty of money, and I still had no money. I just couldn't afford what I was doing. It was, you know, really, and then I started, getting involved with criminal sorts of people, and, um learning a few things, and it wasn't me. I didn't like what I was doing, and I wasn't good at it either. I would, I I got first time I broke into a house, and I stole a heap of stuff because I was hanging out really badly, and I met this girl, and yeah, we stole a heap of stuff, and I wanted to take it back, and the guy threatened me not to take it back, and I got back to my house, and I took it to every cash converters around Adelaide, and the police caught up with me in about 2 days. It was like I almost I wanted to get caught. Like, I wasn't trying to, hide it or anything. And so I was looking at 3 years in jail for that, and, I chose to go to rehab, and I was about my son uh, he was 3 at that point. And, I just wanted to be a good dad, and I couldn't stop drinking. When my son was born, it was the most amazing thing that had ever happened to me, and I couldn't stop using heroin, and I couldn't stop drinking. And his mum, she was a heroin addict too, and I tried to save her because, I tried to help her, and I didn't know that I couldn't help her. Like, I thought I was doing the right thing, but yeah, I couldn't stop once I started either, and, went to that first rehab, um, and I, I had no idea. Like, I just wanted to go in there to stop using drugs. I didn't want to stop drinking. Mm, and the lady in there said to me, um, "Were you using last year?" And I said, "Well, not very much." And she says, "Were you drinking?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I was drinking." Which she said, "Well, that's using." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know that." And, it was all new to me, and I got into a relationship there, and I got kicked out, and then that was my first rehab. I got introduced to another rehab that was in about 2006, and that was a 12-step rehab in Currumbin, Queensland, where they took us to lots of meetings, and that was the first time I ever got any experience of anyone. There was a guy there who shared his story, and he was 10 years clean, and he was a heroin addict. And, and at this point too, I didn't know that I was an alcoholic. Like, I still didn't believe that I had a problem with drinking. And, and I also didn't think it was possible to get off of heroin, so I just didn't know what to do. But when I heard this guy, he was in nice moleskins and boots, and he was driving an Audi, and he was 10 years clean, I just cried. I thought, "Wow, I've got like, I can actually do this if you know, I still didn't know what to do, but I thought it's possible." And, yeah, I got out of that rehab, and I didn't get into a relationship in that rehab. I got through it, and I got out, and I came to meetings, and, And then, I drank again, and I started using again. And I went to another rehab, a nuns rehab in St. Mary's. And I was just using the whole time in there too. And then I got out of there and went to another rehab, I went to Currumbin again and gave that a shot. And I still had no idea. I had no idea that drinking was the thing that kept affecting me, and couldn't get it through my head. Got into a relationship there and got kicked out again, and had to catch the plane back with no money. And wanted that girl to come back with me too. It's like, it was ridiculous, the way I thought. It was women was another drug for me. Like, if I was in a rehab and there was a pretty woman in there, and I had half a chance, I was going to take that chance. And that's sort of how my life went up until I actually, the last rehab I was in, I got through that in Kaipo in 2010. And a guy came up and mentioned, he came up to the rehab. They didn't do 12-step or anything, but they came up and said, have you heard of NA or NAA? And I said no. And he said, come to a meeting. And so when I got out of that rehab, I went to a meeting and I surrendered. That's when I started doing meetings for, I haven't stopped going to meetings. That was 15 years ago. And, I got 30 days up, 60 days up, so, another 30, 60, whatever, a year, busted, got another year up, busted. And then I got 2.5 years up, and I thought, hey, this is good. Like, I'm getting somewhere. I was starting to sleep. I was starting to, had a good program. I'd started a rehab. I was living in a housing trust, had no debts. I'd been through bankruptcy twice, and I just got out of bankruptcy and I had no debts. And I started a meeting in the housing trust that, and I had a sponsor and I had a sponsee, and I was doing all the stuff that you're supposed to do. And I got to 2.5 years, and I thought, I need more. I need something more than this, And I was really happy too. Like, I was never been so happy, and I had nothing. I was living in a housing trust. I was working the program. I had friends in recovery, and my brilliant idea was to get a business started again. And I did that, and I did really well. I turned over nearly $400,000 in my first year with a business partner. And I just went like hell leather into this business and dropped everything in recovery. Dropped that meeting, dropped my sponsor, stopped going to meetings. I was starting to get headaches, and I started taking over-the-counter Masindol for these headaches. And very soon after that, not realizing either that what I was doing, complete denial about I was letting this program go that's just been saving my life. I need to start making money and get my life back. That's how I thought. And made good money, and went to the pub, started playing the pokies, and within, I reckon, 2 or 3 weeks, I was back on the heroin again. And this time I had money, and I've never used so much in my life. That nearly killed me, and I come back into recovery and kept coming back. And I didn't use. I had a lot of relapses, but I didn't use that heroin for probably about 6 or 7 years because of this program. The relapses, I'd get a year up again, 9 months up again, a year up again, and I just didn't know what was causing it. And I thought I was sexually abused when I was 13, and I thought I'd held that in until this point, and I thought it's got to be that. I've never talked to anyone about it. And so I was 47 at that point, and Jay was my sponsor, and I talked to him about it, and I made the decision I was going to take this guy to court, which in hindsight I wish I never did it. But I thought, if I do that, I might, they told me 6 months they said the payout was $1 million. I was very happy about that. But it did end up that way. It took 3 years and a lot of pain, and I had to relive this experience over and over and over again for 3 years, and you know, I did win the case, but I I wanted to kill myself, many, many times in that process, having to relive this, and it was just I couldn't believe that, that this was happening, and I was in recovery, I was, drink I wasn't using didn't when I relapsed, I wasn't using heroin or anything at this point, and I would just, I'd have a few drinks and, come back and get sober again. It just kept busting, and eventually that ended up I got about 2 months before I was to get paid out a fairly large sum of money. I 'Cause I won that, and I got to face that guy in court too, so, and he said sorry, and that's probably the best thing I got out of it, 'cause the money did me no good. I got, I got sober again before I got that money in my bank, and I thought, "I've gotta stay sober," and I did okay. I took my son to Cairns and spent a month up there, and bought a car and set up my business a bit. And then at 9 months, I decided I didn't have a sponsor. I was just going to meetings, so I wasn't doing the program, at this point. I didn't think I needed a sponsor. That's the denial I was in, and I've been around the program for a long time. I was back in that denial thinking I'm in control again. I've got some money, and I was gonna, buy a house up in a little unit up in Cairns and this sort of thing, and I went to the pub and had a drink, played the pokies. That's how it starts, and yeah, within a couple of months, I was, went back to the heroin again. I was using about $1,000 a day. I went through that money in a very short time, probably about 3 months. I went through about $80,000, and yeah, it just blew my mind. I came to Christmas and I thought, "Is the money's gone. What are you gonna do now?" It's like, and I didn't come back to recovery for 2 years. Like, I stayed out of recovery after that. I just thought, I can't get this program, I was sick of relapsing, sick of trying to come back and do it again, and, I thank God I eventually did, I got onto a maintenance program, and I still was drinking, like, I was drinking vodka solos and that sort of thing, and so that slowed down, and then, I sort of got it was always in the back of my mind, I wanna get back into recovery, and in this point, I got married in this time and all sorts of things, but, I, uh, I would be saying to my wife, I've gotta get back to recovery," and she didn't understand what I was talking about, but, she had no idea, and, and eventually, I got a phone call I kept in touch with John and Richard, the gardener, um, in that 2 years, and I got a phone call from John, and he said, "Come to a meeting," and at that point in time, I was looking through all my photos, just looking at all the good times I'd had in recovery, and, all the times that was shit, and I've had a lot of good times in recovery, because since I've been in recovery, it's saved my life. I've spent at least 10 sober years because of recovery. That doesn't help with my mental health, 'cause but it has saved my life. Like there's 10 years there that I haven't been drinking and using, and, so I'm really grateful for that, and, yeah, when John rang me, I had the willingness. Like, he said, "Come to a meeting," and I went down to Brompton, and then I drank again that night, and then I went back the next day, and, yeah, and even then I was thinking, "I'm not getting a sponsor, and I'm just gonna do it my way." And within 3 days of coming to meetings, that all changed, and I found a book in my office I started cleaning out that an old sponsor had given me as a book of prayers, and had the St. Francis prayer and uh, heaps of different prayers, first step, third, all the prayers, and I thought that was a God job, because that had sat under all these books for years and years, and, just put it under the pile, never even looked at it. And I started reading that every morning and night and getting on my knees and praying, because I was really stuffed. Like, I was so broken. In the end, I wasn't drinking very much, but I was broken, and I wanted to die, like I didn't want to live anymore. And so I on the third day I started praying to God and coming to meetings every day, and got a sponsor. Ben was my sponsor. He's not here, but he's been supporting me through this year. And yeah, it's amazing that where I was in the denial of like the position I was in, and to be able to come into recovery and have support, and then and stay sober. It's amazing. I just I just buckled in this time. Really have given it my all, and just still going to meetings most days today because I just celebrated a year, and my head's my sponsor said, "Oh, how's your birthday?" I said, "Oh, it's okay, but it's there's I'm just like at the beginning of seeing how sick I am. Like I've got such a long way to go in recovery." So it hasn't been like bells and whistles coming up to this year. It's been like, oh shit, this is recovery, and I've just got to keep doing it and stay sober. It's not a time to go out and, my head's already been going, I want to start this and start that and get involved in, I've got a few things that I've got in plan that I want to do, but I'm just almost, thinking just let that wait for now, because what I've done before, it hasn't worked. And my most important goal today is just to stay sober and get to meetings and keep working on, I'm doing the 8th step and 9th step at the moment. And that's sort of, that's not a happy place. It's not like, everything's great in recovery, because it's not. Like I've got work to do, and but it's good, I'm in recovery and I'm sober and I'm clean, and it's been 9 years for me to get to this 1 year clean, because of all the denial that I've gone through, with alcohol, with with everything. So yeah, I'm really grateful to be sober and clean, and I owe it all to this program and to my higher power. And really appreciate you asking me to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
AA has more than 2 million recovering alcoholics throughout the world. In Australia, there are about 18,000 members. They meet in over 2,000 local meetings spread around the country. Meetings range in size from a handful in some areas to hundreds or more in larger communities. And once again, if anyone is struggling with alcohol issues, please call Alcoholics Anonymous in 1300 222222, or visit their website on aa.org.au.